There's a change happening, a shift in the landscape. For generations, the church has stood as a cornerstone of society, a beacon of hope, a place of solace. But something has changed. The pews are emptying, and a whole generation seems to be drifting away. We're talking about millennials, a generation raised in a world saturated with information and faced with challenges their predecessors could scarcely imagine. Today we're going to explore the reasons behind this growing divide, delving into the hearts and minds of a generation seeking something more. Millennials, much like any other generation, yearn for authenticity. They crave genuine connection, a sense of belonging, a place where words and actions align. But what happens when the very institution that preaches love and compassion falls short of its own teachings? When the weight of judgment overshadows the embrace of acceptance? The church, for all its virtues, is not immune to the flaws of human nature. And when those flaws manifest as hypocrisy, it cuts deep, especially for a generation disillusioned by superficiality. They see leaders preaching humility while amassing wealth, advocating for forgiveness while harboring judgment, espousing unity while perpetuating division. These inconsistencies, these cracks in the foundation, erode the trust that binds a community together. And trust, once broken, is a fragile thing to mend. The world is a cacophony of voices, a constant barrage of information vying for attention. In this digital age, relevance is not a given, it's earned. And for millennials raised on a diet of instant gratification and ever-evolving technology, the church can sometimes feel like an echo chamber, a place where time stands still while the world outside rushes on. Millennials are grappling with issues their parents never faced: climate change, social justice, economic inequality. They're looking for guidance, for wisdom, for a framework to navigate these complex challenges. But when the church seems stuck in the past, clinging to outdated traditions and failing to address the pressing concerns of the present, it risks becoming irrelevant, a relic of a bygone era. Trust, once broken, is a fragile thing to mend. And in recent years, the church has been rocked by scandals, by high-profile moral failures that have shaken its foundations and left many feeling betrayed and disillusioned. These aren't just abstract headlines, they are personal wounds. When those entrusted with spiritual authority abuse their power, when the very people meant to embody love and compassion succumb to darkness, it casts a long shadow. It makes it harder to believe, harder to have faith, harder to reconcile the teachings with the reality. The scars of these betrayals run deep, leaving many questioning the very institutions they once held sacred. The church at its core should be a sanctuary, a place of refuge, a community bound by love and acceptance. But too often it becomes a place of exclusion where judgment reigns supreme and differences are met with condemnation rather than compassion. Millennials, more than any generation before them, value diversity and inclusion. They've grown up in a world where differences are celebrated, where individuality is embraced. But when the church clings to rigid doctrines, when it draws lines in the sand and pushes away those who don't fit neatly into predefined boxes, it creates a climate of fear and rejection. It tells those who are struggling, those who are different, those who are simply trying to find their way, that they are not welcome. And in a world that already feels isolating, that kind of rejection can be devastating. In an ideal world, faith would be a source of unity, a common ground where people from all walks of life could come together. But in our increasingly polarized society, the lines between faith and politics have become blurred, leaving many millennials feeling alienated and disillusioned. For a generation that values authenticity and abhors hypocrisy, the sight of religious leaders aligning themselves with political agendas can be deeply off-putting. When the pulpit becomes a platform for partisan rhetoric, when the gospel is co-opted to serve political ends, it undermines the very essence of faith. It turns what should be a sanctuary for the soul into a battleground for ideology, alienating those who seek solace and spiritual nourishment. In a world that often feels isolating and transactional, millennials, like all generations, crave connection. They long for a sense of belonging, for a community where they can be known and loved for who they are. But the traditional church, with its formal structures and hierarchical nature, can sometimes feel impersonal and distant. Millennials are looking for authenticity, for vulnerability, for a place where they can bring their whole selves without pretense or judgment. They want to engage in meaningful conversations, to wrestle with life's big questions, to connect with others on a deeper level. When the church feels more like a social club than a spiritual home, when relationships remain superficial and the focus is on outward appearances rather than inward transformation, it fails to meet this fundamental need for connection. The exodus of millennials from the church is a complex issue with no easy answers. But by understanding the reasons behind their disillusionment, perhaps we can begin to bridge the divide. It's a conversation that requires empathy, honesty, and a willingness to listen without judgment. The church, like any institution, must adapt to the changing times, to meet people where they are, to address the needs and concerns of a new generation. It's about building bridges of understanding, fostering genuine connection, and creating spaces where faith can flourish without sacrificing authenticity. If this resonated with you, if it sparked a thought or stirred a question within you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation, let's learn from each other, and let's explore together how we can create a more inclusive and authentic expression of faith for all.